guys, I have found the single biggest factor in height growth other than genetics. Here is a chart of the top 20 tallest countries in the world. And now, here's a chart of the top 20 countries that have the highest raw milk consumption per capita. Notice anything different? 17 of the tallest 20 countries are also in the top 20 countries of raw milk consumption. These countries also have the highest rates of lactose pertinence, which is the ability to digest lactose into adulthood, indicating that these regions have been consuming raw milk for millennia. Still not convinced? You just think it's a coincidence, right? First off, the chance of this happening by coincidence is 1.6 to the power of 10 to the negative of the 18th power. Second, here's a chart of the top 20 shortest countries, and now a chart of the top 20 countries with the lowest raw milk consumption per capita. That's right again. 8 of the shortest countries are also in the top countries for the lowest raw milk consumption. What exactly does this mean? Quick science lesson, these studies are graded on a correlation percent system. Generally, anything 70% or greater is a very strong correlation, meaning this is most likely the biggest factor, and anything from 30 to 69% is considered moderate. For example, the correlation between height and arm span is 61%, which is not perfect. There is a noticeable correlation. Anything below 30% is considered a weak correlation. An example would be a music preference and personality traits, which has a weak correlation of 19%, so there would still be a very slight impact on personality based on music taste, but it's negligible. Now that we have that out of the way, when we look at the correlation percent in the first set of graphs here, it's a whopping 77.3%. Now we're talking about raw milk consumption here. So this indicates that raw milk consumption very strongly is linked to height growth in these countries. And you can do the calculation yourself. Use this formula. Now, let's look at the correlation of all the countries. Here I plotted out all countries on the graph from tallest to shortest. The country ranking is on the y-axis on the left. Next, I ranked the same countries but for milk consumption per capita. And here's what I got. So now we can overlap the two of them and see if there's any difference. And as you can see, there's clear outliers here that show the average country drops lower when the average milk consumption drops lower. It's more prevalent in the highs and the lows of the graph, and more random in the middle. I hypothesize that this means a lack of milk is detrimental to your height, and a surplus of milk is very beneficial towards your height growth. While a moderate amount of milk doesn't make much of an impact on your height to make the trend easier to see. So I guess that's what we can infer with the middle part of the graph. Places where, there is moderate milk consumption, you could see that the average heights are skewed. Now I actually added a average tread line that you can see on the graph here, and you can see how almost parallel the two sets of data are. Let's look at some tribes now. The Maasai tribe is famously known for their tall heights. They are cattle herders actually, which means they are very close to cows, and their diet consists of mostly milk and blood, funnily enough. On the other hand, tribes like the Yanomami are very short, averaging at a height of 5 foot 2 inches. They live in the Amazon rainforest and only eat fruits and fish. No cattle, meaning no milk. Raw milk needs to have the nutrients and hormones to grow a 60-pound calf into a 700-pound cow. Now imagine what it would do to you. Finally, before we end the video, let's actually go into some proven data published by PubMed that proves that drinking milk actually will make you taller. With this study I found on PubMed, they compared the milk consumption of females and height growth. So with this study, they were actually comparing the amount of milk consumption that makes women at risk for breast cancer. So they weren't even looking at height growth, which actually accurately suggests the fact that milk does contribute to height growth, as there was no confirmation bias. They weren't even measuring it as a effect. They were more so looking for the negative health effects of milk consumption. Because of the nutrients and anabolic hormones, cow's milk may promote height growth, which in turn has been related to breast cancer risk. We prospectively investigated associations between dairy intakes and height growth. With this study, they were actually measuring all dairy intake, so not just milk. They actually specified different areas of dairy products. I think they went into yogurt, cheese, if I'm not mistaken, and of course, they measured milk as well, just to see if there was any difference. 5,101 girls from throughout the US completed annual surveys providing height, weight, and past year diet, aged over 9 years old with no serious medical conditions. We studied 3 outcomes: annual height growth, peak growth velocity, and adult height. So the results were prenatal girls who drank over 3 servings of milk grew 0.11 inches more the following year than girls consuming less than 1 serving a day. The yogurt group actually saw 0.13 inches, but the cheese group or total calories didn't see any predicted height increase. So baseline milk and dairy protein predicted taller adults essentially. Dairy protein was more important than dairy fat for all outcomes. Non-dairy animal protein and vegetable protein were never significant, nor were non-dairy animal fat and vegetable fat. So to conclude, all the food and nutrients studied, dairy protein had the strongest association with height growth. These findings suggest that there is a factor in the non-lipid phase of milk. So to conclude, there hasn't really been too much long-term research done, which is why the scientific community still looks down on this milk consumption, unfortunately, but you can't argue with the data and you can't argue with the research when you compare the countries and milk consumption. What are your thoughts on this? Please like, comment, and subscribe and follow me for more content. Thank you.